Hello and good evening. Welcome to episode 13 of the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship program Navigating New Space. In this segment, we talk to mentors, fellows, and affiliates of the program about what takes place within MIFP and what is going on in the world of new space. My name is Shayna Hume. I am a 2018 fellow of the program and the host for this segment. Today, I am so excited to welcome 2020 fellow from our most recent class, Hossein Ahmed. Hossein is a first-generation college student from New Jersey pursuing his bachelor's in aerospace engineering at Rutgers University. He's passionate about space exploration and commercial spaceflight and has completed internships at L3 Harris, NASA Glenn, and Blue Origin in pursuit of that passion. So, without further ado, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, how you doing, Shayna?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Just back at school, so just doing work and lab reports and whatnot.
Something that every student watching this can appreciate, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's tough, but you'll get through it. Don't worry.
So I have a whole bunch of questions, about your space passions and everything today. But before we dive too deeply into that, could you tell me a little bit more about yourself, what your passions are, what your senior thesis is, and what really got you into commercial space? And we'll go from there.
Yeah. So, thanks for having me, first of all. And I was born and raised in New Jersey, so there's a lot of opportunities around this area. A lot of them are related to like pharmaceuticals or finance. So I didn't really know too many engineers or aerospace engineers growing up at all, especially in my family, because no one in my family had really gone to college before. I just kind of started liking astronomy and whatnot when I was younger, and then getting a little older, as a senior in high school, I had to pick engineering because I felt like that could give me a good chance of getting to work on someplace like NASA. That was my goal before. And then around, I think it was a sophomore, I saw the Falcon Heavy launch that everyone remembers that loves, commercial space. Those two Falcon Heavy boosters landing like changed my life. And I was like, you know what, I want to do this now. I want to work in commercial space and make rockets and whatnot. So I didn't really think I could do it because it was, such a small industry and I didn't really know anybody in it. Before me, they didn't really take interns from Rutgers for a lot of these companies because we have kind of a new aerospace program, but I just took a year off for internships and I really pursued it, and it worked out, and it's a great experience. And if anybody else is out there that has any questions, they could ask me about it, and I would tell everyone to keep going if they have that passion, because it can happen really quick.
Definitely. If anyone does have questions, by the way, I will be keeping an eye on the chat and I'd be happy to field them as we talk back and forth. So, keep them coming live. So when you applied to Rutgers, did you already apply as an aerospace engineer or did you make that decision partway through?
Yeah, so I was a little on the fence because I was trying to decide if I want to do astrophysics or if I wanted to do aerospace engineering. And I applied to both the School of Engineering and the School of Arts and Sciences. And you don't really declare your major in engineering until right after your freshman year, at the end of your freshman year. So I got into both the Arts and Sciences and engineering school. And this was one of my freshman year was the first year that Rutgers actually offered an aerospace program, aerospace engineering program. So I said, you know what, screw it, I'll go ahead and do it. And I never looked back.
That's awesome. So what year, or I guess what gap year did you take off? Was it between sophomore and junior?
No, it was actually a little risky. It was my senior year I took off. So I was supposed to be graduated this past May. And after my junior year, I had an internship. And then I got an offer at NASA while I was at my summer internship going into senior year. And I said, hey, I'll take one semester off. Can't hurt. I'll delay it a semester. And then Blue Origin came calling that semester. So I took the next semester off too. I'd say it was worth it, but now I have to do a bunch of lab reports while all my friends have already graduated.
Yeah, that does happen, but I'm sure the experience was worth it.
Yeah, I would do it again over if I had the option.
Awesome. So, what topics within aerospace are you? Are you on the astrodynamics side, the bioastro side, like Annika? Where do you find the most excitement within aerospace?
Yeah, so I really do it like my for my work. I was really at Blue Origin. I worked a lot on mostly really just hardcore mechanical engineering. I was a fluid system engineer on New Glenn, so it was a lot of analysis, a lot of design, and some testing stuff as well. But my research that I'm working on at Rutgers is mainly focused on the bioastronautics side of things, like the challenges to like the human body in the lunar environment for long term habitation, and that kind of relates to my work that I did at NASA as well. Because at NASA, one of my projects was I there's this thing called NASA at Work. It's a challenge for NASA employees that it's open to the entire agency. Whenever there's a problem that nobody could solve, they put it out as an open question or a challenge to the entire agency, and people submit proposals, and the winner gets funding from headquarters to pursue it and start testing it and stuff. So our challenge was surviving the lunar night, and me and a few people at NASA at the time came together and submitted a proposal of using aerogel as thermal insulation and radiation shielding to help people survive in lunar night and spacecraft survive in the lunar night without the use of radioisotope heating, which has never really been happened before on the moon. And if we want to stay there long term, we're going to have to figure out a way of doing it efficiently without having to use a lot of energy to keep us through the lunar night up there because it gets really cold. So that was really fun, and that's kind of why I want to do this research here as well. But I enjoy both aspects of doing the mechanical engineering side of things, but then also seeing what it really takes, the challenges biologically of having people live long term, because those challenges, some could say that are even harder than the engineering challenges, because it's hard to make a rocket to go to the moon or make a rocket to go to other planets, but getting a human to live there long term, there's a lot of complications with that as well.
Yeah, and that question, NASA at Work, that was pitched before Artemis was announced, right?
Oh no, I think that was I mean that was during the Artemis program was still going on.
Okay.
But that kind of just put things in perspective for me, where before I worked at NASA, or before I really got into space industry, I think everyone has asked this to themselves at some point. The Apollo program was in the 60s and 70s, and we went to the moon so long ago. Why don't we have a base up there right now? Why aren't we living on Mars right now? Everyone asked that question to me, and I didn't really realize until I got there, and I was the actual challenges that go into having people live there long term. The radiation, it gets really hot, positive like 250 F almost in during the lunar day, lunar night, negative 250 Fahrenheit, and doing that long term is very tough. And then when you have radioactive like nuclear generators up there, it's going to give another source of radiation. So there's a lot of challenges that I didn't realize existed, and we have a long way to go before we can establish a permanent presence on another planet.
Yeah, for sure. But only, 6 or so years till we theoretically want to be there, which is a
Yeah,
little bit of a conflicting message that we need to rectify.
yeah. I mean, you set aggressive deadlines, so maybe you can meet them a few years late. But
Good points, good points. So, going into this area, it's commonly called bioastronautics, how humans will live and work in space. There's a ton of different topics within it, but usually it's not covered extremely well in undergraduate aerospace degrees. I know it never even came up at my university, and I thought the only people who studied it must have gone to med school or something. How did you find out about it? How did you get into it? And did you feel like there was a bit of a learning curve coming from an aerospace engineering degree to do that kind of thing?
yeah, it's a good question, because that doesn't really exist in any coursework at Rutgers either, as undergrad especially. And I didn't really even realize it was a branch, like I said, until I went to NASA and I saw all these. There was a lot of people working on biologists and chemical engineers working there as well, trying to solve these problems. And really, when I got there, I was doing my senior design project and talking to people there. My professor Haim Ben Arroya at Rutgers, I was I got in contact with him early on when I was a freshman, and I saw that he was, one of the professors doing a lot of this research, and in the aerospace engineering program. And he actually is the one that pitched it to me because I told him I want to do independent research with him this year. And he said, "Hey, you've done this research for lunar habitats, and I'm doing a senior design project right now with him for lunar habitats, but on the mechanical engineering perspective." And he's like, we should probably look into, if we're gonna live on the moon long term, the biological challenges, because those are really important too. And there's a lot of room for growth there. And I would say definitely, I would encourage more people in biology or people that are, in aerospace engineering to open up to that a little more, because I'd say there is a little bit of a stigma with aerospace engineers or mechanical engineers. They're like, oh, that bio stuff, that medical stuff, like we don't want none of that. We just want to build rockets, but that's only part, like a little piece of the puzzle, I'd say. Everyone's got to come together for us to actually become multiplanetary.
Definitely. I think my freshman year, everyone wanted to be a propulsion engineer. That was the path if you were an aerospace engineer. And while I do value the propulsion engineers very much and their safe work, it is not the only course. There's so many more topics to be explored.
Yeah. Can't do any of the civil engineering slander either. We need those coaches on the moon and Mars too.
I might have to start cutting those jokes out of my repertoire. Rough.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you plan to do bioastronautics going forward? Has it won you over?
I mean, I'm keeping my options open, but I think definitely right now, on the technical side of things, I would like to full time probably go back to working on launch vehicles or spacecraft, and get my skills up further on the technical side of things, the mechanical engineering side. And I think as I'm doing that as well, I'd like to keep researching, and maybe for my master's, if I'm going to go back for doing a master's, maybe I would pursue bioastronautics there. But there's a lot of questions I'm still trying to figure out. And I kind of enjoyed Blue Origin because I could talk to people there in different perspectives. So if I go back there, I feel or somewhere else similar, there are people that you could talk to at work every day. That one of the interns when I was working there, I was working on New Glenn as a fluid system engineer, but the intern that was my neighbor, he was a space architect. So I would just get to talk to him on the bus every day when we were at work going to lunch. And I'm like, wow, your job is so different than mine, but it's so cool. And he's solving a completely different problem.
What does space architect mean?
Like space, we're trying, the mission is to have millions of people living and working in space. So I'm not sure what I can say about it, but he had a really cool project. Very, very cool project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot we always have to avoid questions about Blue, but that is one of the cooler titles. And I've noticed that it's actually one that my European peers use a lot more. They will say they are studying space architecture. So this is just the first time I've heard it in a US based context.
Yeah. No, it was really interesting because I have never met one either. But he was actually a full-time architect for a few years and then decided to go back to school to become a mechanical engineer. And it was just, best of both worlds. And he decided to just do space architecture. And the fact that they actually pay people to do that at Blue was pretty amazing to me. And it would look like a dream come true for someone who wants to pursue that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So avoiding all of the technical stuff, none of that exists. Could you tell us a little bit about your experiences comparing what it was like to work for NASA versus what it was like to go into the commercial industry, maybe so that, younger students who are looking at those options can hear a little bit about what the two personalities are like?
Yeah, it's a good question because a lot of people, I mean, everyone knows what NASA is. That's kind of what I only knew what NASA was too when I was in high school, and my parents did too. They were like, "Why are you leaving NASA to go to Blue Origin? It's NASA." But I enjoyed my time at NASA a lot. I got to see a bunch of different things going on, and there was a lot of different projects going on at the same time. It was kind of like a museum too, where I could walk to a different building and I see all this history going on because I was at Glenn Research Center where they had so many labs, so much research going on that every building had a different story. So that was amazing in itself, but I wanted to work in the commercial space industry because, I saw throughout the years that, every 4 years there's a new wave from Congress, or with the president's priorities can change. And if you're at NASA, sometimes you could be working on a project and it could get canceled because your funding kind of depends on Congress. So I also wanted to try out commercial space because I thought it was a little more fast paced. I wanted to try that out because I was just seeing people that were pretty young working there, like kind of looked like me, and that was not as much as the case at NASA. It's starting to become like that. I think there's a lot of people that are hiring, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to get into the new space industry. I feel that if we create a self-sustaining space economy, we can make a lot more progress, and we won't get stopped or canceled by programs if people see the value of going to space. And that's the reason why, like I said before, why haven't we gone back to the moon to stay? There are challenges engineering-wise and biologically, but I think one of the main challenges is that we never saw the value of going to space as a public. The public didn't see that we go to space and they saw we're just wasting money. We're just doing it to show. And now with the commercial space industry, they're making profits. We can we can mine asteroids. We could get resources from other planets and bring them back here. And we can launch satellites. And I think all that stuff is opening people's eyes to investing and pushing it forward as fast as we can.
Yeah, makes total sense. We actually just got a question. Not sure if it's from a prospective applicant, but I'll bring it up. So Jack asked in a beautifully wordy question, if people love lots of aspects of space, is there a place for them? Maybe we can talk about NASA and rotation programs, or private companies that offer rotation programs or internships. But do you have any advice for someone like him who wants to not just specialize in one area, but be able to touch lots of aspects?
Okay. Yeah. Oh, like a rotation program you're talking about, or just like someone who's
I think that's what he's hoping for. I'm not sure. I think a rotation program would be a good solution to this personally, but he seems to just want to be an engineer who gets to touch lots of parts of the program that he's on. Yeah.
First of all, what's up, Jack? I go to Rutgers with Jack, so I know.
Oh, nice.
But he actually is applying to the fellowship, and I would say to him too, Jack. I don't know if I've told him this before, but the fellowship especially is not made up of a bunch of rocket scientists. There's a few and a bunch of engineers, but there also are a lot of fellows that are very involved in space policy and whatnot, and other aspects of and scientists as well, working in space. And even personally, my mentor for the fellowship is Brett Alexander, and he is not an engineer. He's the VP for government sales at Blue Origin. So every time I would talk to him, he would give me talk about space policy all the time. And there are a lot of opportunities for that. In every company has a space policy department, that people that work on space policy and space law. And there's also the Commercial Spaceflight Federation, which was started because of that reason. They needed the commercial space industry to survive, and they needed them working on space policy to push against big aerospace. So I think there's a place for every kind of major in the commercial space industry. And I think it's just growing and getting bigger.
Yeah, definitely. And to add on to that, if you're interested in multiple things, that's often why trying out different internships is a good way of getting to experience them. You can't do everything at once, but you can at least jump onto different teams, have different experiences. And then some companies in new space also have those kinds of rotational programs where for the first few years of your employment, you'll get to go into different areas and build a more well-rounded expertise as well. New space is fun that way. They want people who are good at lots of things, which is a little bit different than historically what we've been charged to do, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, and then we have one at Blue as well. I know a few. One of the previous fellows, Dan Zenko, he started at Blue Origin as a rotation engineer while I was there as an intern. So he's having a really good experience there right now with it.
Very cool. And of course, always pitch the fellowship. Using the fellowship, you can meet a whole bunch of people in different areas, and that'll help you to understand them.
Yeah, and I will say that definitely with the fellowship, I have been tempted multiple times in the fellows chat someone sending a random space job with something completely unrelated to doing aerospace engineering or mechanical engineering, and then them saying, if you want to apply to this, let me know and I'll refer you. And I'm like, I got to think about it for a while, like the entire career path. But it's tempting. Fellowship definitely opens a lot of doors in that sense.
Yeah, shout out as always to Josh Ingersoll. Those constant posts are tempting for sure.
Yeah.
I know I think about leaving grad school all the time because they sound like so much fun.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So I do have some other questions in the area of spaceflight. You ready to move on?
Yeah. Sure.
Cool. So what do you think about Artemis and human spaceflight? Can you give us any of your own ideas on, how Artemis might evolve, or what you think would be a really ideal way for us to establish our permanent presence?
Yeah, I'm always conflicted with Artemis. Hot topic. Well, I love the push for going back to the moon. I know there's a big moon Mars debate all the time, and some people think we should go to Mars. We should forget the moon because we've already been there. Personally, I do think the moon to Mars approach is like the right thing to do, because in order for us to, there's so many problems like living on another planet that I think we need to sort that out on the moon before we get to Mars. Because when you go to Mars, it takes you 2 years to get there and you can't really look back. If there's an issue, especially the comms delays, the communications delays, it's I'd say a few light minutes away, which is very long time if you have an issue and you need to get a message back. It could take you up to an hour sometimes at the furthest point to get a message to Earth and back, which is not really acceptable for what our missions are like right now. And if we're living there, we need some type of AI robot that can know infinite knowledge, basically, because you won't be able to ask questions back home. So I do like the fact that we're going back to the moon, but I also think that it's great, the push that we're making. It kind of reminds us of Apollo, where we're making the push like really quickly to get to the moon as fast as possible. But I also don't want this to be a repeat of Apollo. I don't want us to go plant a flag on the moon and then the same thing happen over again, where people get not excited anymore and we don't get any value out of it. I think that if we go to the moon this time, we should go there to actually stay and iron out the issues for living on the moon and establishing a permanent base before we get out there. And I was reading through the Artemis plans the other day, and I was seeing like there's not really concrete plans on a permanent base on the moon yet, from what I saw. I might be wrong, but I think that they should definitely focus on that before they go plant their flag or go up there, because I'm all for that. But I think we need to do it right this time. And people hate on SLS too, but I understand the SLS situation where back in the day when SLS was created, or Ares, like there weren't these SpaceX or Blue Origin, these companies that were really big that were actually capable of making these launch vehicles. So I do understand from that perspective that a lot of people say like, let's just cancel SLS right now and go with another launch vehicle. But if I had invested that much money and time into it, and back in the day they didn't know if any of these companies would survive, which thank God they did. They didn't have that back then, so I understand that as well.
Yeah, plenty of companies that were started privately failed. These ones are just the first generation that have really sustained and created a bit of their own economic niche. So there was no way of knowing at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool. Do you have any thoughts on last week's update to the Artemis Accords between NASA and ESA?
Oh no, I didn't really look too much into that. I saw a headline about it, but what was it?
Honestly, I have to straight admit that I haven't read it either, and I was hoping you would teach me about it. So I think after this, we need to go read the Slack and learn about it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna check the Slack in the Fellows chat and see what they're talking about. But I saw someone post something about it today, because Starlink had updated their terms of service or something, and said something about the Mars or something, and no country can govern has any governance or ruling over Martian land. And we'll see what countries have to say about that. But that's another thing.
Things are spicing up for sure.
Straightened out for this wave of commercial space exploration, and us competing with other countries going to other planets. Because if we're establishing permanent bases on the moon or on Mars. The Outer Space Treaty is pretty outdated, and let's be honest, like, are people actually going to honor that if they go out there? Because if people are going out there, like I said earlier, they want to go out there knowing that they're going to get value from going into space, and if they can't own anything that's there, they might just completely just abandon that treaty. Maybe it needs to be updated. Maybe people need to come together and make different demands, but things have to happen internationally before we can go out there. Because I don't want to. I've seen the show Space Force. I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't want that to happen.
Oh yeah, it's a documentary, right?
Yeah.
Got it. When it comes to going to Mars, what do you think needs to change or needs to happen before we can have a sustained presence? Because the moon is one thing. I think with enough, resources thrown at it, we will make it happen. But I believe there are some significant barriers that need to be overcome for that permanent Martian presence. What do you think?
Yeah. And I think I touched on this a little bit before. We see Elon and a lot of people in the space industry want to go back to Mars as soon as possible. Sometimes he makes predictions that it's going to happen in like 2 to 4 years, and I kind of roll my eyes when I see that, because I'm really excited for it, and I'm all for going there. But we can't send people there not knowing what's going to happen to them. Understanding, bioastronautics, like having people living on the moon for a long period of time. I think that is something that needs to happen before we could send anyone to Mars, so we can understand the long-term effects of that. So we need to establish a permanent base on the moon, definitely first for at least a few years. And then also, I think I share this same opinion with Steve Isakowitz. We had talked about this earlier in one of the summit events, where AI is probably going to be the biggest game changer for deep space exploration, for human deep space exploration, because like I said, the communications delays are they're unacceptable if you're trying to communicate with a human back and forth constantly throughout a mission. If there's anything that's wrong, either you have to be the smartest person in the world as an astronaut, or you need a robot that is the smartest person in the world, and that seems a lot more feasible. And that's going to take a few years of technology to get up to that level before we could send people out there with those robots to Mars.
Mm-hmm. Makes total sense. You actually mentioned some of the virtual events, which gives us a perfect segue. Today, we are not featuring a lightning round. I hope there weren't any fans anxiously waiting, but instead, we're going to have a series of questions about what it was like to be a virtual fellow. Right now, there is no intent for the next year of MIFP to be virtual, but the team valiantly created this amazing experience for this past class of fellows to handle the changing circumstances in the world. And I'd love to ask about your experiences with it and how you managed to use that to your benefit.
Yeah. So I'll be honest. I mean, I know a lot of people had that question. Some people asked me that too. And at first when I found out about the whole COVID situation and we might have a virtual summit, the only thing I was thinking was like, oh, I'm not going to get to meet Elon Musk and Buzz Aldrin like last year's fellows. But the virtual summit, I will say, thanks to the whole MIFP team, it was amazing. And personally, I think it had a lot of advantages that the one weekend summit didn't have, in the fact that instead of it being 3 days, it lasted 2-3 months, where every week or two in the summer during my internship, I would log on to a Zoom call with a different CEO or a different executive from a different space company, and we would get to chat with them, ask them questions, and they were all always open, very open with us. With their, they had no filter with us. They weren't giving us political answers. I'll say they were very honest with us, and they would give us their true opinions on things, and that was amazing to see that. And they were all very helpful and said, if you have any questions after this, we can talk. So the virtual summit, I'd say, was pretty amazing in that sense, where I wasn't really bored for the whole summer. I had something to do every week. I'm like, oh, I guess tomorrow I got to talk to this CEO or something on Zoom. This will be fun, and it was a great time.
What a fun thing to have on your calendar.
Yeah, and I'll say the graduation was amazing too, because we got in the graduation call, and I thought it was just going to be a normal little thing, but they had a lot of surprises packed in there for us because I think first Peter Diamandis like Zoom bombed us and on from his private jet. He's talking about it, and then after that, Gwen Shotwell calls in, and she's like, we're like, it's a random number, and someone's like, who is that? And she's like, oh, it's Gwen Shotwell. If once this COVID thing is over, you guys should come to SpaceX. I'll give you a tour. And I'm like, wow, this is unreal. It's just from every direction. I didn't know what was happening.
Oh, I love that. They still managed to give you guys that, celebrity bomb feeling that we all got when someone would just walk in the room. And they managed to do it virtual, which is impressive.
Yeah. Steve's got a lot of tricks up his sleeve.
That's very cool. And how has it transitioned? You're one of the most recent fellows. You're only an alumni of the program as of the last few months. What has it been like transitioning into being part of this fellowship as a whole now, where you're combined with all the other classes?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, and thanks to whose ever idea was to make that Slack, because I think before we were kind of we'd kind of talk to the fellows like in GroupMe, my class of fellows. And I did live with a fellow this summer and saw a couple of fellows that worked at Blue Origin pretty often. But I think making that Slack with all the previous fellows made us way more connected. And I think, I think you probably see me at least text in the chat like once a day or something like that. Space news, job connections, just things in general. Space memes, every single day. There's just people, going back and forth in there. And I feel like I'm so connected to not just a class of fellows, but to the entire space industry where, we see an article or something and we're like, oh, hey, I know that guy. Or, we have a question about something and we're like, oh, does anybody know what's going on here? And someone else is like, oh yeah, I just talked to him. He said, this. So it makes me feel a lot more connected in the space industry. And I kind of always feel like I know what's going on. So it's pretty fun.
For sure. I know we hype up the Slack a lot, but I think one of the benefits of this program is that it is so new. Every single year of fellows is adding something new at this point. It's not stagnant. It's only been a few years now, but we've come up with ways to stay social. We've come up with the Slack and a way of organizing our insane menagerie of thoughts. And I think that with continuing years of fellows joining, that there are going to be even more creative solutions that come up for networking and generating ideas together.
Yeah, I hope as more people start applying to this fellowship. I know it's a little new first few years, but every single year it's going to be more and more and more people applying and get more and more competitive probably. And hopefully in a few years I'm asking one of the newer fellows for a job. that'd be pretty awesome.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I can't wait until someday when I get to interview a fellow for a job, maybe. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So to wrap up, I want to head to the question that I've been asking all the time because it's the question that matters to me right now, and the MIFP hasn't told me to stop asking it, so I won't. This year has a lot going on, and in fact, all years do, but this year it's coming to the surface of people's awareness a lot more. Given the gravity of a number of problems in the world, how do you think that we can show people that space is important, or what can we tell them? Why is it not like it used to be, where we were just spending money for a one-shot Apollo to the moon and then leaving? What to you makes space so important and so different this time?
Yeah, personally, yeah, I think that space, especially this time, is really different because the entire goal, if you look at these companies now, from SpaceX to Virgin to Blue, everyone's mission is pretty similar along the lines of opening space to everyone, and not just a certain group of people. They want everyone to be able to experience that. And we, I always talk about the magical experience of going to space. And as a kid, everyone's always looking up and is really inspired by it. I know I was, and at some point in their lives, most kids are thinking they want to be astronauts. I think that with this push that we're seeing with this commercial space industry, it's not I think the next few years, it's going to become less and less out of reach for people. I remember, years ago, probably not too long ago, a rocket launch probably seemed like such a insane thing is happening. And it was not as frequent as it is happening now. And eventually, we're going to get to a point soon where it's just going to be happening every day, and people can be going to space every day. And a lot of these aerospace companies now, especially in the commercial space industry, they take input from their employees because they value their employees, and I think that they are at least trying to make a push to make it more inclusive and have more diversity, because I know that's something that the aerospace industry in general historically suffers from diversity, and I think that is changing gradually, and hopefully it does over the next few years as well, further and further.
I hope so too. Hossein, thank you so much for taking the time to join me this evening. This has been such a fun conversation, and it's so great to get to know some of the new fellows that are making this program even better by the year.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Have a good night.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. For everyone else, applications are still open. Obviously, you should have been working on it for months and months already, and you should have already turned it in ahead of time. But sometimes engineering doesn't work that way. So we understand if you're just starting now. If this fellowship seems like it might be something that would help you get to where you want to go in the space industry, reach out, ask us questions at Matt Fellowship on social media, and get your application in before the deadline in a few weeks. If you have any questions, we would be so happy to answer, and there's information at MatthewIsakowitzFellowship.org. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great night.